So it's Canada, and it's getting pretty cold already. It's actually -1 Celsius today. I have to drive the kids to school every day, and the car's getting a little too cold for my liking in the morning. Decided to look at a remote car starter. This is a 10-year-old Mitsubishi Outlander. Trying to figure out something that works and is relatively easy to install. So I picked up iDataStart HCX 00A, 000A, which allows you to start it from the OEM remote. Obviously, I only have the distance that the remote has, but that works for me. Car's parked right in front of my house, so it seems like a good solution. The other thing I liked about this is that it has a bypass module built in, so I don't need to have something extra to fiddle around with to try to figure that one out. Bypass module allows you to use your, or doesn't require your key in the ignition to start the vehicle, so it sort of bypasses the security measure when it's trying to start. So anyways, yeah, I'm not a professional installer. I am an engineer by schooling, so I figure I can do these sort of things, but I think I got in a little over my head. I'll explain why. I bought this off of Amazon. They say all over their website and everywhere else that this is meant for professional installers only. But anyways, I figured I could figure out how to make it work. So that's what I did. First thing I did is got the wiring all working. In the manual that they provide you when you go online onto their website, there's a lot of instructions. The key one being the wiring diagram, which you can see a lot of my markup here. It was already cold outside. I didn't want to do this while I was sitting in the car, try to fiddle around with this stuff. So I spent a long time inside just making sure I had all the wires right with the various cables that they give you. Every cable has a ton of wires coming out of it. You only need a few specific for this vehicle. It tells you exactly which ones, so make sure you run them correctly. And it tells you what you're connecting it to on the other side in the car. So for example, orange accessories connects over to on the right there, light green accessory. You gotta make sure you run that one correctly. I used a little labeler to make sure I had all the wires labeled nicely and I can actually read them when I get in the car. So for example, this is an M5 cable they gave you, and on the other side it's supposed to go to the alarm system. This car doesn't have, so I never actually installed this wire, but just made it easy for me when I actually got out into the car. In the car, as you can see, there's a heck of a lot of wires underneath there. I had to take off all the housing underneath the steering wheel, underneath the dash there. It's all relatively easy to get off. I have a bit of a tool to do so. I got to look for the occasional Phillips screw to take out, but other than that, it's pretty easy to take off. It was relatively easy to identify all of the cables coming out of the ECU. They're pretty clearly marked in the instructions, the location of those things. White connectors with so many pins, it tells you exactly which one to take out. The only tricky one was the few that it didn't actually tell you about. So there was a few on the bottom of the instructions here. For example, the horn and hood switch. It didn't say where those were. So I actually had to look further online to find a third-party wiring diagram of the car, and that was this one from DirectWire. It gave you all of the wires on the vehicle that I could look at, and told you where they were. So, for example, the hood pin in the middle there, dash fuse box bottom edge. That was a little tricky to figure out where the heck the bottom edge was. Took me longer than it should have, but I did find it at the end, and found the hood pin in that one and the horn pin. So was able to get all those connected. The other thing iDataStart makes you do is flash the module online. I already used the iData, whatever it's called, the Maestro for the radio. So that I already had a login for that. Was able to connect the module via USB, connect it up to the whatever it's called, the web tool that they have. That was relatively easy. Select the vehicle, get it flashed, and then it gives you all these install diagrams, which actually gives you colored diagrams for all the various pins. Oddly, they had different markings on this one than they had in the normal instructions there. So they got some of the pins reversed or something on this diagram. I double checked between the original drawing they gave and the third-party diagram, and turns out this diagram is wrong. So it's only the parking lights, not a big deal, but that was a bit of more time just figuring out which one was actually correct and which one was wrong. So after that, installed them all in the car with the proper taps into all the connections. And you can see up here connecting into the accessory and ignition and starter using the using taps that I bought off of Amazon as well. Makes it a heck of a lot easier to connect in rather than soldering or anything weird like that. You got to do the same thing on the other side for the ignition as well. I don't know if you can see those ones, but in the back there behind the black unit, that connects into the CAN bus, high and low. So got all those connected. Quite happy with all my work here. I thought I had it right. Let's give her a go, and nothing happened. In the module programming procedure they give you, I was trying to follow those instructions to make sure it worked. Insert key into ignition, turn it on, and waiting for a green LED. Nothing came on. So trying to figure out what I did wrong. Had to use my trusty multimeter to make sure I actually had solid connections. Everything looked good. Couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. So I gave up for that night and came back the next morning with the kids with a car that's still ripped open. But I just tried it, ignoring the green LED light, and it actually worked. Miracle of miracles. For whatever reason, the green LED didn't come on at the beginning, but by the end, the confirmation green light did come on, and the start actually did work. Works great after that. It's been working all week. Takeover procedure, very easy. Turn the key after you start it. Get in the car, turn the key on. Wait 2 seconds. Turn on the step on the brake, and it works fabulously. So it's been great all week. Having run for 5 minutes or so before the kids get in the car. It's warm and toasty. So overall, all in all, liking it. Just need to get everything cleaned up underneath the dash there and get all the panels back in. I would recommend getting a professional installer to do this. I think I was in a bit over my head, a little bit worried that I was going to waste $150 or so, but at the end of the day, I was able to get it working. Know what I'm doing relatively well around electrical, so I was able to figure that out. One thing I forgot to mention, before I did start any of this, I did unplug the battery. I do that when I'm doing anything on the car. So unplugged the negative on the battery and made sure there's no power running to this. You actually do need to tap into a pretty thick gauge wire, the positive voltage wire. And so I didn't want to get zapped there or cause any problems. So it's good to turn off the battery first and then reconnect after it's done. So anyways, I can give it a test if I can find my keys. Should be 3 lights, or 3 clicks rather. And there we go. Car started. Possibly icy roads. It is Canada.
Continuous recording will now
and
start.
turn the keys on. Press on the brake. Takeover procedure. It's all good. So I've cleaned it up a bit underneath now. Use some zip ties to get the cables out of the way. Secure the module down to the frame. Looks pretty good. Just going to put the last bit of cover on, and it should be back to new. Looking much nicer now, all cleaned up. Awesome.